I'm starting over by moving to Thailand with my new girlfriend. Those words stared back at me from my computer screen, sharp and unapologetic, posted by my husband Derek for the entire world to see. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning, or at least it had started that way, until his Facebook post pierced through the monotony, cutting deeper than I expected. As comments flooded in, shocked from mutual friends, confused questions, and hollow condolences, I sat frozen, my coffee growing cold beside me, forgotten. Their disbelief was almost laughable. They didn't know what I knew. With trembling fingers, I typed a single word in response. All right. My name is Alina Mitchell. I'm a 52-year-old software developer from Chicago. Derek thought he was delivering the final blow, parading his betrayal like some grand announcement, convinced I was too naive, too fragile to fight back. But what he didn't realize was that I had been watching, waiting, and preparing for this moment for months. His post wasn't the beginning of my downfall. It was the start of my freedom. Last spring, the signals had begun to surface. Derek started working late, making enigmatic weekend business trips and protecting his phone as if it held state secrets. The true warning sign, however, was when he began to inquire about our investment portfolio and retirement funds. Derek had always left the financial planning to me because he was a senior manager at a construction company. I started to have concerns about his newfound attention. When I first expressed my doubts, my sister Kate informed me, "You're being paranoid. 23 years of marriage would not be thrown away by Derek." However, I was aware. The same intuition that helped me successfully troubleshoot intricate computer systems also warned me that my marriage was seriously failing. I began recording everything, every password to our shared accounts, every late-night transaction, and every questionable credit card purchase. On my work PC, I made a folder called System Backup 2023. It was harmless enough if Derek ever saw it, but it contained a thorough log of his increasingly dubious actions. His last act of conceit was the Facebook post. I was oddly at ease when I looked at his smiling profile photo, which I had taken at our anniversary meal only 6 months prior. He believed he was leaving in style, but he was unaware that I had been meeting with Diana, the top divorce lawyer in Chicago, for the past 3 months. I had previously obtained copies of all our critical documents, recorded his pattern of financial manipulation, and transferred the majority of our shared assets into accounts under my control. Derek used to make fun of me for being a computer geek who had no idea how the real world operated. He thought that without him, I would collapse like some poor damsel in distress. However, I had learned one important lesson from my 25 years of coding. The most effective programs provide for every potential possibility of failure, and I had carefully prepared for this one. Living with Derek had turned into a master class in ignoring warning signs. We first connected at Northwestern University when he was doing his business degree and I was finishing my master's in computer science. His ambition and self-assurance inspired me at the time. Compared to the other males in my program, he seemed unique. He was able to make me laugh and discuss topics other than code. Our marriage was going well in the beginning, or so I believed. Our first house, a lovely Victorian that required renovation but had potential, was purchased in Lincoln Park. Derek moved up the corporate ladder at his construction company while I accepted a position at a burgeoning digital startup. We discussed starting a family, but for some reason we never tried again after my first pregnancy ended in miscarriage. We put all of our energy into our careers instead. In hindsight, I ought to have observed how Derek's perspective on me changed as my profession flourished. He disregarded it as mere computer play when I was promoted to lead engineer. He began making disparaging remarks about how fortunate I was to be a woman in technology after my pay surpassed his. However, I continued to justify him, believing that a good wife would do so. Last March, I had a wake-up call at a dinner party. Someone questioned Derek about the software they were using to manage a new project his company had secured, and he was boasting about it. Derek interrupted me before I could respond, adding, "Oh, Elena doesn't understand these things. She only does simple programming." As our guests shuffled uneasily in their seats, I felt my face boil. They were aware that I had created comparable systems for big businesses, but Derek found it offensive to admit my knowledge. After everyone had gone that evening, I began to listen more intently. I observed Derek leaving the room to answer calls, changing the password on his phone, and starting to bring up a new project coordinator named Jessica more and more. Then followed the receipts from restaurants I had never heard of and the weekend conferences he was unable to fully explain. The only person who truly understood what was going on was my sister Kate. One morning over coffee, she insisted that you protect yourself. Derek is plotting something, not just having an affair. As a banking professional, she witnessed far too many women who were left in financial ruin due to unanticipated divorces. I followed her advice to the letter. Derek believed I was engrossed in my video games, but in reality, I was recording every questionable transaction, every unexplained absence, and every passive-aggressive remark. I started sending all significant financial documents to the private email address I had created. As Kate advised, I began putting money into another account. Retaliation wasn't the point. It was a matter of survival. When I entered our kitchen the day following Derek's Facebook statement, I saw him sipping coffee smugly and watching my face for any indications of a breakdown. As if he hadn't just announced our marital breakdown to the world, he said, "We need to talk. I've already discussed asset division with the lawyer." My blood boiled at the assurance in his speech, but I maintained a bland expression. I recalled Diana's counsel. Let him believe he is in charge. Derek and other men hang themselves with their own conceit. I take it that the new female you mentioned is Jessica? I poured myself a cup of coffee and asked quietly. His eyes grew a little wider. I knew her name, which surprised him. The person in charge of your Singapore development project? What did you... He began, then stopped. It makes no difference. I'm not going to be mean about this, Elena. The house is yours to keep. All I want is that you move my portion of our investment portfolio and retirement accounts. The papers will be sent along by my lawyer. I took a sip of my coffee and nodded. When it comes, I'll have my lawyer look it over. Of course. His eyes flashed uncertainly, briefly, but satisfactorily. Obviously, he hadn't anticipated that I had previously hired legal advice. Your attorney? Trying to get his bearings, he scoffed. Elena, hurry up. Don't complicate this. You're not suited for a courtroom battle, as we both know. I saw his expression change from assurance to bewilderment as he went for his phone, most likely to check his accounts. He tapped rapidly at his screen and murmured, "That's strange. There is a problem with the banking app." After trying one app, he tried another. The furrow between his brows grew wider. What's happening to my phone? I put my coffee cup down. You use the same email address for all of our financial accounts, so perhaps you should check it. I saw his face getting paler by the moment as he opened his phone to check his email. You can. I see now. Last night, I changed every password. Isn't two-factor authentication a great feature? His haughtiness eventually gave out as he sputtered. You can't do this. It's also my money. I slid a folder across the counter and said, actually, I am able to. Copies of all the paperwork are available here. Money transfers to Jessica's account in Singapore, your unlawful withdrawals from our joint accounts, and the fictitious investment account you opened in your name. My attorney possesses the originals. Oh, Derek's face turned red instead of pale. Have you been watching me? I've been defending myself, Derek. There is a distinction. I got up and gathered my belongings. By the way, the United States and Thailand have an extradition treaty. Before you attempt to access any of our accounts from there, just something to think about. While I packed my overnight bag, Derek feverishly called his lawyer throughout the course of the next few hours. I had already made plans to remain with Kate until the situation calmed down. He was in his home office, and I could hear his voice growing more irritated as I folded my clothes. Do you imply that she has records? They were private transports. He stopped and listened. You're not understanding. She only works as a coder. She was unable to have... Are you referring to forensic accounting? As I closed my luggage, I gave myself permission to smile a little. Derek and other guys like him always undervalue their spouses, Diana had informed me. She has stated at our first encounter that those who take advantage of that underestimation are the intelligent ones. Derek was pale when he eventually came out of his office. According to the attorney, you filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery and financial abuse. His smugness had given way to something more like to fear, and his voice had become quieter. You have proof of everything, he says. That's correct, I said, looking at my phone as a new email notice appeared. Oh, and it appears that the HR department of your business recently got an anonymous report regarding some anomalies in the cost of your projects, particularly the romantic dinners you had with Jessica and paid to the Singapore development account. We both knew I already had, but he said you wouldn't. I went on to say that I also took the initiative to send the board of directors those dubious expense reports. The weekend visits to Miami that you recorded as client meetings piqued their curiosity the most. Oddly enough, I can't recall Miami being involved in the Singapore project. Derek's face was in his hands as he sunk into the couch. Please, Alina, let's discuss this. I realize now that I made a mistake. An error? Anger that had been repressed for 23 years rose to the surface of my throat. Forgetting our anniversary is a mistake. Buying the incorrect coffee brand, flaunting your affair on Facebook, and attempting to embezzle our retirement funds are all mistakes, Derek. That's not an error, it's a decision. Diana sent me another email, and my phone buzzed once more. I said, looking at the message, will you look at that? While the case is pending, the judge has issued an emergency injunction that freezes all of our combined assets. Those documents detailing your deposits into Jessica's account must have been useful after all. Derek said, what am I supposed to do, in a low voice? Our joint accounts are connected to all of my credit cards. I picked up my luggage and made my way to the door. There's a certain irony about this, you know. You used to complain that I played with computers too much. However, it turns out that I learned exactly how to follow digital paper trails from all that playing. If you know where to search, you can find evidence of every login, transfer, and deleted email. Derek's carefully thought out plan to flee to Thailand began to fall apart over the course of the following several days. He was placed on administrative leave by his employer while his spending records were looked into. As it happened, Jessica had secrets of her own. In Singapore, she was already married to another person. She swiftly left Derek's life after the company's inquiry revealed that, blocking him on all platforms. From the comfort of Kate's guest room, where I spent my evenings informing Diana of Derek's increasingly desperate attempts to gain access to our accounts, I watched it all happen. He attempted to contact our bank, but he was unable to confirm his identification without the two-factor authentication numbers that are currently connected to my phone. When he attempted to charm our financial advisor, he found that I had previously told him about the situation and given him copies of the court order. One night over a bottle of wine, Kate said, "You've got him cornered. However, are you not concerned that he might do anything extreme?" I gave a head shake. I took care to save his Facebook post and all of the comments because of this. If he makes any attempt, it will just strengthen my argument to the judge regarding his character. The moment Derek's attorney left the case was the tipping point. Later, I discovered that Diana had forwarded to him the whole dossier of evidence I had collected, including every questionable transaction, improper expenditure report, and correspondence between Derek and Jessica that I had been able to retrieve from our shared cloud storage. Derek began phoning me all the time, alternating between pleading and threatening. In one voicemail, he yelled, "You've ruined my life. I'll make you feel bad about this." In the next, "I made a horrible mistake, baby. Please. We can resolve this." I never answered any of his texts. Rather, I sent Diana each threatening voicemail, and she added them to our expanding evidence file. Each threat he made just made me stronger. The last straw was the conclusion of his company's investigation. Derek had been embezzling money from project budgets for years, in addition to utilizing corporate cash improperly to pay his affair with Jessica. They charged him with embezzlement and fired him right away. We received the news at Diana's office, and I was there. "Do you still intend to relocate to Thailand?" As she read the email from the company's lawyers, she queried sardonically. Since this would likely be a favorable moment, I couldn't contain my laughter. For years, Derek treated me as though I was naive and incapable of comprehending the realities of business and finance. Here he was, however, undone by the very abilities he had disregarded. My ability to trace intricate paper trails through computer systems, my comprehension of digital forensics, and my attention to detail. What's the best part, you ask? I informed Diana. He still doesn't realize how long I was aware of it, or how long I was collecting evidence while he believed I was just his tech-naive wife. I came back to our home 3 weeks after Derek's Facebook post to gather additional belongings. I discovered him sitting on the front steps, his clothes disheveled and unshaven. It was a startling sight. The professional executive who had been so proud of his fresh start plan was nothing like this ragged man. He yelled, "Alina," as I passed him to open the door. "Could we just talk, please? Everything is gone for me. My future, my career, and my reputation. And who is to blame for that?" When I finally turned to look at him, I inquired, "Derek, you didn't just try to get away from me. You attempted to ruin me. You genuinely believed that I would just observe as you depleted our funds and fled to Thailand with your lover." "I didn't mean," he began, but I interrupted him. "You did, indeed. You meant it completely. Failure was the only thing you didn't intend to do." I showed him his Facebook post, which was still visible to everyone after taking out my phone. "Didn't you feel incredibly proud of yourself? I'm positive your foolish wife wouldn't anticipate it." He sagged even more, raking his hands over his disheveled hair. "The business is pursuing charges. They're threatening to put me in jail. Additionally, Jessica no longer returns my calls." "Imagine that," I remarked sourly. It found out that a lady who would assist a married man in stealing from his wife in business was unreliable. I am astonished. I have nothing left, he said. My credit cards are maxed out, my accounts are frozen, and I can't get a job. I can no longer even afford a good attorney. I reflected on all the times he had disparaged my career, labeled my work unimportant, and treated me as though I were beneath him. He was now undone by the very abilities he had disparaged. What was your biggest error, do you know? With my hand on the handle, I inquired. It had nothing to do with the stealing, the adultery, or even that absurd Facebook post. It was underestimating me for 23 years. You really believe that I was merely an unsophisticated coder incapable of comprehending your clever plans? Please, Elena. It was his final attempt. We can begin again. I'll compensate you. I felt nothing except sympathy when I gazed at him, actually looked at him. No, Derek, we are unable to. On one point, though, you were correct. I pointed to his phone's Facebook post. A new beginning is being given to someone. Simply said, it's not you. Leaving him on the steps, I entered the house and made my way directly to my home office. I could see him slowly leaving through the window, his shoulders hunched, realizing at last how badly his plan had gone wrong. After Derek's departure, life found a new rhythm. As part of the divorce settlement, I returned to our home, which is now legally mine, and concentrated on getting better. During that first week, Kate stayed with me and helped me remove the remnants of my previous life with Derek by moving furniture and repainting walls. After Derek's criminal charges were revealed, the divorce process proceeded swiftly. His new attorney, who was obviously less experienced than his old one, suggested that he accept my requirements in order to win over the prosecution. My retirement funds were unaffected, I kept the house, and most significantly, I was free. Word got throughout our social circle quite fast. I received private messages from friends who had left comments on Derek's Facebook page, offering consolation and sharing their own tales of betrayal and healing. My coworker Sarah persuaded me to join her women's support group. Since I was the only one present who had successfully turned the tables on her ex, I initially felt uncomfortable. However, I soon found myself giving guidance on digital awareness and financial security. After group, Sarah proposed that you conduct a lesson one evening. There are a lot of ladies who are unaware of how to safeguard their finances. I began organizing a session on digital financial security for women going through divorce once the idea took root in my head. There were only 8 women in the conference room of a community center for my first workshop. However, I noticed a shift in their gaze as I related my experience and the precautions I had taken. Just like me, these ladies had initially felt helpless. By the end of the session, they were frantically taking notes and posing queries regarding password security and bank accounts. The workshops expanded. Word got out via women's support groups and divorce lawyer offices. Diana even began recommending me to her clients. She told me that you're teaching them things that their lawyers aren't even aware of. You're restoring their authority. According to rumors, Derek accepted a plea bargain on the embezzlement accusations. He would be placed on probation after serving 18 months in a minimum security facility. It transpired that Jessica had already targeted another married CEO with access to corporate funds as her next target. There were moments when I questioned whether he ever understood how badly his strategy had failed. About 6 months after Derek's Facebook post, I was looking through my inbox one morning when I came across a message from a woman in Seattle. She used my advice to find her husband's hidden cryptocurrency accounts before he could deplete their savings after attending one of my online workshops. She wrote, "You saved my future. You gave me the strength I needed when I was about to give up and take whatever he had to offer." Tears filled my eyes as I sat there reading her words repeatedly. For years, Derek disregarded my abilities and treated me as though I were inferior to him. They had brought me to this point in time when I could assist other women in defending themselves. It had a certain poetic quality that even my tech-savvy mind could enjoy. As my classes grew in popularity, I was forced to make a choice I never would have imagined. I was given a sabbatical by my IT firm to concentrate on creating a comprehensive program for women's financial security. I didn't miss the irony. Derek had written off my job as computer play, but now I was able to help others escape the fate he had in store for me. I was assisted by Kate in creating a suitable website for the workshops. She required that you keep a record of everything. Thousands more women could benefit from your tale. She was correct. In a few months, I was getting calls to speak at legal seminars and women's conferences all over the nation. And I met Jessica's spouse at one of these seminars, the one she had been married to in Singapore while she was courting Derek. He had come especially to express his gratitude. He had discovered a pattern of similar schemes with other executives in addition to the affair with Derek, thanks to my testimony. He shook my hand and said, "You saved me from losing everything." Like Derek, she had everything planned out. One of the most important aspects of my recovery was attending the monthly support group sessions. I saw women come in afraid and broken, then slowly change into strong survivors. I could relate to several of their stories. Husbands who had undervalued them, believing they were too weak or gullible to defend themselves. I got a notification on my phone one evening as I was leaving a workshop. At last, Derek had taken down his Thailand Facebook post. That message had been up all this time, a digital monument to his conceit, even though his profile had been silent since he started his prison sentence. The removal of it was like a chapter coming to an end. Derek and I enjoyed our last anniversary dinner at the same location, so I treated myself to dinner to commemorate. This time, however, I sat by myself with my laptop, finishing the manuscript for my book, Digital Breadcrumbs, A Woman's Guide to Financial Self-Defense, rather than across from a man who was secretly hatching a scheme to defraud me. The book's foreword was written by Diana. Alina noted that her narrative is about more than retaliation. It's about taking back control of your life and utilizing it to help others. She was correct. Derek attempted to shatter something inside of me, but every workshop, every speech, and every lady I assisted managed to mend it. My final divorce decree and the advance copy of my book arrived on the same day. On my desk, I arranged them side by side, one document signifying the end of my previous existence, and the other the start of something unexpected and novel. Kate texted me, and my phone buzzed. A celebratory dinner? I had a look around my home office, which is now the main location for my workshops on financial security. Women who had heeded my instructions to protect themselves left thank you notes all over the wall. Every one of them told a tale of female empowerment and defiance. A year after Derek's Facebook post, his sister Marie sent me an unexpected email. She hadn't known who I was until I told her my tale, but she had attended one of my courses in Boston. She wrote, "I never imagined Derek would do something so calculated, but I always knew he was selfish. I applaud you for retaliating." Her remarks struck me in a different way than all the other encouraging messages I had gotten. Derek's own sister was seeing not only his treachery, but also my ability to overcome it. When I first saw his Facebook message that morning, I was struck by how far I had come. The person I was at the time would have fallen apart and possibly pleaded with him to stay. His lies about her being weak and gullible would have been believed by her. However, that lady was banished, changed by the very tragedy that was supposed to ruin her. Someone stronger, a woman who had transformed her suffering into meaning, took her place. Helping other women was no longer the sole goal of the seminars and speeches. It had become my purpose. I felt more of my previous scars healing each time I assisted another lady in defending herself. Derek had hoped to start over in Thailand, believing that a Facebook post would be enough to end 23 years of marriage. Rather, he provided me with the motivation I required to uncover my actual strength. We can become our finest selves as a result of the biggest betrayals. I discovered an old picture of Derek and me from our wedding day last week as I was rearranging my home office. The innocent woman in the white dress was beaming up at a man she believed would protect her, and I hardly knew her. I placed the picture in the pass box and went back to my computer, where I was waiting for another thank you email. This one came from a Texas grandma who had helped her daughter leave an abusive marriage by using my advice on digital security. She wrote, "You taught us that growing older doesn't mean being helpless. In actuality, knowledge is protection." I still cry when I read these texts, but not because they bring me pain. The tears come from something deeper, a reminder that sometimes our greatest triumphs are born from our darkest hours. With that single Facebook post, Derek thought he was closing the final chapter of my story. Little did he know, he was actually writing the prologue to something far greater. Diana tells me that my new book is already gaining attention in legal circles and is set to be released next month. My calendar is packed with speaking engagements through the end of the year where I teach women how to protect themselves in an increasingly digital world. Ironically, the very skills Derek once mocked, the ones he claimed were useless, have now become my strength, my legacy, and the reason I stand tall. I'm too busy living this new life to dwell on the past, but every now and then, I catch myself wondering, does Derek ever think about how spectacularly his plan backfired? He wanted a fresh start, sure, but in the end, it wasn't him who got one. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the SoraBook channel to hear more powerful, inspiring stories in the next videos. There's so much more to come.